Hello, and welcome to another live. This is our weekly live event that we host, talking about the different elements of application process. Today, I'm really excited to be here and talk about the Stanford Graduate School of Business application. I know you're all anxiously waiting for those official due dates and official announcements from the school, and I have hopefully some good news to share later on in the process, so stay tuned. Just a bit of logistics before we get started. I will be, as usual, I've put together a few slides just to anchor today's conversation. I do encourage you to write your questions in the chat. We'll try to answer as many as possible. We have received some questions that have come through the registration form as well, so we'll go through those and answer those questions too. So I'm always a little bit ambitious. I put together more slides than there's time, but we'll try to get as much as possible. Now, just the components in terms of if you're looking for support, first and foremost, if you're just looking to understand where do you stack up, are you competitive applicant for the top 20 business schools, we are excited to have launched a quiz. It's a two-part quiz. The first part is you get a score in terms of answers that you have provided and your competitiveness. That score helps you kind of understand where you stack up. But then you also get a more personalized feedback based on what you share. So there are components where you're entering more qualitative data that I get to see in relation to your full story, and we'll get a written report from me. So I do encourage you to complete that quiz. It doesn't take very long to do, but it helps you understand a bit more in terms of your profile and as a starting point. Then if you want to have more detailed conversation with me in terms of how can we support your application, you can reach out for a consultation call. The link will be also shared in the comments. It's in the description of this video as well as on the screen. So you can request a 30-minute conversation with me to talk about in more depth about your profile, areas that you are struggling with, and then, of course, ways that I can support you in that process. And then finally, we are in this MBA series at the moment in terms of business school specific series. Next week, we'll be talking about Berkeley Haas as in their application. So I encourage, if you are considering applying to Berkeley Haas, that you join us for that session as well. So with that, why don't we get started and go through the slides. Again, write your questions, whichever platform you're joining us from, so this way I can try and answer as many as possible. So for those who have been following us, you know a bit of my story. I am founder of the CA Admission Coaching, which is essentially focused on helping applicants tell their unique stories through their written application, whether that's through resume, through essays, and all the components of the preparation. I do help applicants one-on-one, coaching them through the process. If you are new to this channel, you want to hit that to subscribe to our YouTube channel or whichever platform you're joining us from, so that you can continue to watch the series that we host in terms of MBA applications and things that you need to keep in mind as you walk this journey that is a very pivotal journey for your career. Today, what I'm going to cover is, obviously, we're going to look briefly at the GSB criteria, as far as like their class profile, what their evaluation criteria is, and then application components, and then we'll dive into Q&A. I have been enjoying when I receive questions along the way and responding to those. So if you are live and ask questions, I would love to be able to answer those as we go through the process. So looking at the numbers, Stanford's Graduate School of Business has the most competitive pool of applicants in terms of how many are admitted. They admit about 7%, based on last year's numbers. 7% of students that have applied have been admitted to Stanford's Graduate School of Business. They have a relatively small class, only 431 MBA students that join the MBA program there. We'll talk more about essentially like why this class is so small, and then also the importance of the curation of who gets in and who does not. They have really high averages in terms of GPA, GMAT, GRE, and TOEFL. So if you are looking to apply to these programs, definitely make sure that you are in a line. It doesn't need to be equal to the class profile if the rest is stronger or strong, but you definitely do need to demonstrate that you have academic aptitude to be successful at Stanford. So let's dive then right into the next part, their criteria. So what is it that they're looking for in an application? And it's very broad in terms of what they share, in terms of what they're looking for, but what's important to remember is that they are really looking to put together a diverse perspective, a diverse classroom with diverse perspectives and experiences, because that's how everyone learns in an MBA program. So they're looking really more about experiences in terms of how you do things. So it's not about just having achieved things. It's more about how you approach. So how you think, what is the process of your thinking, how you see opportunities, how you see setbacks, those kinds of components, how you lead. So what's your engagement with the community that you are a part of, and then how you see the world in terms of how you see yourself in relation to the world. And that doesn't mean the world at large as in the globe, but meaning the world in which you are a part of. This is going to be transferred to or looked at from all components of the application. That's your essays, application, portal, short answer questions, resume, letters of recommendation, really the full package, interview as well. You must keep these components in mind as you are crafting every aspect of your GSB application. And we'll dive more on that in a little bit. So what makes GSB unique is, of course, it's very competitive. We're all, most applicants that are applying to business school are ambitious, and they want to get into the best of the best schools, which is absolutely natural, I would say. But what makes GSB unique is the environment that it has, and also what is it that they're looking to cultivate. So the journey at GSB, while you may think, you can just become a faceless student, it's actually a very personalized journey, and it's a very flexible curriculum. They are looking at you joining the Graduate School of Business from the perspective of business, but you are part of the Stanford community, which means you are leveraging all the resources and all the opportunities that Stanford has to offer. So not just the business school. And your journey is very personalized to you. They are looking to build leaders who are both analytical and intuitive. So meaning that you're not just individuals who's only thinking from the business perspective, although the business perspective obviously makes sense, and you are analytical in terms of how you make decisions. But there's also an intuition in terms of being authentic, in terms of how you approach problems, how you engage with the communities you're a part of. And you have to demonstrate that in your past in order to convince them that you will be this person in the future. So reflection in this point of time, it's really, really important. I'll pause there because I see a question in the chat. It says, how much percentage deferred MBA students in the class size? Unfortunately, they don't break those details down. The percentage is very small because the deferred applicants are also applying in the same round as the general MBA students. So the 7% is the whole thing. Typically, deferred students are a really small number in terms of like who is admitted. I would assume about maybe 10%. That's probably even a very large number. So it's probably smaller than that in terms of who was admitted. And of those admitted are deferred applicants. So the numbers are very, very small in terms of GSB. Okay, so let's continue. So the culture is very, very important at GSB, and they're looking for individuals who are comfortable to be vulnerable. There is this famous class at GSB, it's called Talk, and it's where you share your own personal journey. It can be obviously various experiences that you've had that have shaped who you are, that have shaped the way you see the world. This is important, obviously, when you're there, but before you're there, they need to see that you are someone who is comfortable being vulnerable, or at least is comfortable presenting the vulnerabilities. This is an element that you will grow through, and it may not be something that you're comfortable immediately, but they are looking to move you outside of your comfort zone. Individuals who are innovative, have an innovative mind and look at solving problems from a perspective that is looking at how we can change the world is going to be important, right? But the school is also it's because the school is structured as such. So innovation and this broad curriculum is part of the GSB experience. And they do essentially encourage faculty to teach the classes in the way that they choose to teach them. There is going to be cases, not as many as Harvard. So Harvard has about 500 cases you go through. I believe GSB is around 300, so it's still a lot of cases that you're going through. However, they're paired with experiential learning opportunities. So you are both becoming or looking at protagonists in terms of the cases, that decisions that have been made at the businesses that you are evaluating and looking at, but also you become the protagonist in terms of what decisions you're making when you get those experiential learning opportunities. And there are opportunities for you to be the leader in terms of making those really tough decisions, but also being the follower in terms of looking at your peers and what tough decisions they're making and moving the projects forward. So it's a very immersive experience at GSB. And obviously, it's something that attracts a lot of applicants to go there. They are looking to build authentic leaders, and that's why there's a lot of emphasis on this intuition and this vulnerability component. One of the questions that they ask in one of the core classes, why would someone want to follow you? A very pivotal question, very important question, and very interesting question to be asked as far as how do you influence others to follow you as a leader. And then, of course, there is this commitment to innovation. When we think about Stanford, it's a quintessential innovation school. Technology and innovation is very, very important there. And there's this cornerstone on campus that reads, dedicated to the things that haven't happened yet and the people who are about to dream them up. I think I miswrote it in here, but the idea here is that this is a place where innovation is at the cornerstone of everything that's happening. And it's important to keep this in mind, because even if you haven't innovated yet, you are someone who are going to be part of this community that has this cornerstone, this quote engraved on this cornerstone, that is essentially you become the representative and for whom this quote is being addressed at. So meaning you are going to have to showcase that you are this person that is dreaming up ideas on how to make the world a better place. And this is going to be very important when you put together your applications. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. I see that there is another question. If a deferred MBA student rejects a seat at the university, would that seat go to the next deferred candidate or any MBA candidate? It depends on the school, so it would be the next best person. Typically, that would be someone from the wait list. So it depends on what they're looking at. They do want to make sure, for Stanford, it's really about cultivating the right classroom. So that person can be a deferred student or it can be a full-time student, whereas for other programs, the deferred, like if you reject a deferred seat, it goes to the deferred applicant pool, right? Because you are applying for that specific program, whereas GSB, it's you are part of the general pool of applicants that is applying there. Excellent. Let's continue. So what are the application components? So this is the good news I heard the other day from GSB admission representative is that it looks like the questions are not going to change for this new application cycle. Of course, this has not been made official on their website yet, but the good news is that you can start thinking and brainstorming ideas on how you're going to start crafting your application. And once it's made official, then you can start actually doing the writing itself. So what is required in the application is, of course, your education and test scores. So it means make sure that you have your transcripts handy, request them if you do not. Your test scores, if you've completed them, just make sure that you send them to the schools that you are applying to and have copies that you can attach to the application portal as well. In the portal, so for those of you who haven't done graduate studies or applications before, and have applied to U.S. undergraduate institutions, you are accustomed to this Common App. That does not happen for business schools. So every school has its own application that you create an account in, you upload all your information in relation to what that particular school is asking. So when I talk about application portal, that is what I'm referring to. And in that portal, you're going to have a lot of questions that are personal. So like your address, date of birth, like that kind of information, but then also information related to activities that you've been involved in, awards you have received. There's also an element where you write about your current employer and past employers that you've had. So remember that the portal does need attention, and make sure you do not use words that say "see resume" because it's a wasted opportunity. GSB has short answer questions that are not technically essays, but there can be essays in terms of it's a short essay that you're writing, you're responding to questions, and we'll go through some of those. Professional experiences and resume. So there is a one-page resume you are to submit for GSB, and that's essentially the highlights, the best experiences that speak to who you are and why you should be in an MBA program, and what experiences can be transferable in terms of that you can leverage in an MBA, but also beyond. You are required to write or to ask 2 recommenders to submit letters of recommendation, and those individuals need to understand, obviously, what the school looks for, how your experiences showcase you as someone who is ready for that GSB experience. And they have 2 essays, 2 essay questions rather, that you are responding to. As far as what I will be covering today, it's really the short answer questions, letters of recommendation, very briefly, of course, and the essay questions. If you have questions related to these components or the application portal, please write them in the chat, so this way I can answer them along the way. So let's start with the letters of recommendation. So you need 2 letters of recommendation. Stanford's GSB, at least up until now, they do follow the GMAC common letter recommendation questions, and that means that those questions are how does the candidate compare to other well-qualified individuals in a similar role? or those are the two main questions. The second one is tell us about a time you gave constructive feedback to the applicant. What were the circumstances and what were their responses? So this is where the recommender will speak in detail about you. When I talked about what they're looking for and the kind of character they're looking to build in terms of the student that comes out of an MBA, then it's really important for you to remember that your recommender does need to capture that person in the letter of recommendation. So make sure that you're guiding them, giving them enough insights so that they can write strong letters of recommendation, supporting you and presenting you as someone who matches the GSB requirements in terms of who they're looking for and who would find success in the program. There are two short answer questions that GSB asks, and they're optional, but I do not consider them as optional when I work with applicants. And the reason is because GSB and all the schools really have taken time to put together an application portal with questions that help them understand why you should be a student at that institution, why they should say yes to you, essentially. And this is an opportunity for you to give them that insights that they need that helps them say yes to you. So you absolutely want to take advantage of that and demonstrate, the character that they're looking for. So the first optional question is 1,200 characters, which translates to roughly about 200 words. This depends on, of course, how long your word choices are. So remember, it's characters, not words, but it just so you can get an understanding of what 1,200 characters mean. And the question is, think about a time you created a positive impact. What was your impact? What made it significant to you and to others? When it comes to what they're looking for, right? So how do you think? How do you see the world? And I forget what was the other one, but essentially you are looking at capturing an experience where you've exemplified or where you have an opportunity to exemplify the characteristics of what they're looking for, right? So keep that in mind as you are reflecting on the example you're going to include in here. Now, remember, you should not be repeating examples, right? Because it's an opportunity for them to get the full picture of who you are, get a mosaic of who you are. So look at which examples that you have and where do they fit best and easiest, most natural way of communicating that experience to that institution or to these questions. Because if you're trying to force something, it's going to come across very unnatural in terms of like delivery. And obviously that's not going to help in your application. So there's another question. I graduated in August 2025. If I have to apply for a deferred MBA program, which term should I apply to, and when will the application deadline be out for this? If you're applying to Stanford, I would definitely try to apply earlier rounds, so round 1 or round 2, but that depends on when you have the application ready. So if you have your GMAT, if you have your, the materials that you need, a strong application reflection of who you are, then absolutely try to target the earliest round possible. But don't submit an application just because you're trying to hit a deadline. Really submit an application when it's the best, strongest application possible. For other schools, they have their deadlines, and those that are for deferred applicants, and those are typically the first week of April. As far as when the rounds are going to be, when deadlines are going to be announced, we are anticipating that to be announced in the next couple of weeks, but definitely by the end of June, we will hear when the deadlines are for each of the schools, like official dates, and the portals will open in July. You'll be able to start filling out information in the portal in July when the application portals open. So let's move on to the next question. So this is another optional short answer question. And the question is, if you would like to go beyond your resume to discuss some of your contributions more fully, you're welcome to share up to 3 examples. I strongly encourage you to actually share 3 separate examples go into more details. It does allow you 200 words or about 200 words per example. So if you think about this optional essay, you fully maximize the opportunity. This is essentially will culminate to about 600 words of content. So this is actually an essay, right? Strongly encourage you to actually respond to these questions because it will, again, give them enough details that they need in order to make a decision and to say yes to you. They also have the main quintessential essays. Again, what they shared with me is that they don't foresee changes happening to the new application for GSB. So these are most likely the questions that are going to be for the new application cycle as well. And the essay, so between essay 1 and essay 2 questions, you have a total of 1,050 words. So you can choose how much you dedicate to each section, which is actually really great. The first question is what matters most to you and why, and the second question is why Stanford? In the first question, what matters most to you and why, they're looking for not just experiences. Of course, the experiences show them how you engage with the world, so how you show up, right? But what they're looking for is who you are, what values you have, and what is your identity. This is where you are able to demonstrate your character, right? How you think, how you see the world, right? If we go back to those pillars of what they're looking for in a candidate, this is an excellent place to think about presenting your story. And how you do that obviously depends on your own experiences and what you have done so far. So it's not just to say, I had this adverse experience, but you have to take it a step further in, yes, this is my adverse experiences. This is what I learned from it. And this is how this adverse experience influences me to show up in the world. So there are several layers to this question. Typically, applicants use about 650 words to answer this question. 6 to 650 is kind of the range in which I have seen applicants successfully be able to capture all they need to capture in responding to this question. And the second question is why Stanford? This is the quintessential goals essay. And I want you to think about your goals in terms of your application to Stanford from the perspective of this is an innovation-focused school, right? This is a school where, you are the dreamer who is dreaming up solutions to the problems that you see in the world, that you are passionate about, that you are really driven to impact. So how are you going to use Stanford to help you do that? You will need to capture your ambition, of course. So what are your goals? How will this goal of yours change the world? So if you want to do something that it's not already here, why do you see it to be a valuable thing to invest your time and money and resources in? How do you see it essentially changing the world? And in what way will Stanford help you get to your goals? And I underline Stanford here because the question is really Stanford. It's not how will GSB help you? And it's important to remember that this is a purposeful question in terms of they're saying, if you have all the resources that Stanford as a whole university can offer you, how are you going to leverage it? Now, it's not to say, okay, I'm going to apply to GSB, but all the things that I talk about Stanford is how I'm going to use the engineering school. Obviously, then you should apply to the engineering school. So you're still thinking about it from the business perspective, but it is an interdisciplinary environment that allows you to leverage everything the school has to offer. So, how are you going to do this? So it's really important for you to be able to capture this in your particular essay. When we go back to, your experiences, present experiences with the 3 characteristics that I mentioned in an earlier slide, as far as what GSB is looking for. Keep those, write them on the Post-it note whenever you're working on your GSB application. Be reminded of what they're looking for and make sure that you're capturing that in your write-up. Choose formative experiences that influence your decision-making, right? Think about what were your formative experiences. This is introspection time, right? Make sure that you showcase motivations. This can be motivations led by past experiences or net new, something that you see in the future, or you see currently that it will be needed in the future. I will say that your personal experiences make for a stronger goal, because otherwise it can easily come across as, I picked something from the hat, or I read an article and I really liked it. It's not really that... if you think about, you're going to have to dedicate a lot of time and effort and energy towards the thing that you are working on. And if it's influenced by something that you've experienced personally, it's going to have, you're going to be able to overcome hurdles that you experience along the way in order to do it. So it becomes definitely much more powerful when it's anchored on your personal experiences. And then just make sure that it's compelling, it's clear language. Don't use fluff language in your writing. You do know that you have limitations in space, so make sure that everything there is also purposeful, just like the application, and make sure that it's concise, that you are not going into tangents that are not necessary. What is necessary for the applicant, for the admission committee to read in terms of your application, and how is that going to help them get a full image, a full picture of who you are and what you're going to contribute to the cohort. So I covered quite a bit in these sessions. If you want to talk more about your GSB application, I invite you to register to have a conversation with me or schedule a call to discuss your application specifically and ways that I can support you. Or if you want to just say, I really want to apply to Stanford and I want to know, how does my application stack up? Use the quiz to start that conversation and just to look at where you stand currently. Well, thank you again for watching, and don't forget to join us again next week where we're going to cover Berkeley Haas.